Community awareness seminar on will and trust organized by TAGCA. This is Nitin Kilaru, General Secretary of TAGCA, and I have Satish Dannamudi, President of TAGCA, and Sai Kavuri, Treasurer of TAGCA, acting as moderators for this webinar. Our speakers today, Mark and Thirumal. Mark is the Director and Vice President of Customer Service at Netla, a company that provides online estate planning solutions. And Thirumal Reddy, a financial professional with a lot of experience with estate planning. With that short intro, I would like to hand over to Mark and Thirumal to walk us through on what is estate planning, why is it important, we will have the Q&A session after the presentation, and the participants have two options. Either they can post their question in the chat window and Sai will raise that question on behalf of you, or you can click on the raise hand button and we will unmute your line to ask the question directly. Thank you, and over to you, Mike and Thirumal. Sorry, Mark and Thirumal.
Okay, sure. So good evening, everyone. Once again, namaste. Na peru Thirumal Reddy, Kambam, Dallas. So I'm, in the process, the request raised from Nitin and Treasurer Secretary, right? So here, he mentioned about this estate planning almost 6 months back. That we had to do community awareness, and because of this, all the transition got delayed. So basically, today is a purely educational awareness program. It's not any sales oriented, and as a disclaimer, we are not attorney or CPA, but we are authorized, and also licensed financial professional to educate you, to address any of questions you have about the estate planning. And so we are, we invited Mark, Vice President of Business Development from Netla. What is Netla? Netla is online estate planning portal. Okay, so it is backed by highly skilled and experienced attorneys across the country. Every state top attorneys are involved in that. So, to make it more affordable, easy, and efficient to the consumers, and, the Netla founder, Jamie Hargo, chose the technology and, proper way of, reaching and helping the more people. So I'm introducing Mark, who has more than 25 years experience, and he will be taking over in the presentation side. And once he complete the presentation, and you can open for question answers, I will be involving to as needed to just show that how the law works in India and how the law works in USA, and how this will fit. So I'll be addressing your questions too after the Mark presentation and question answers. Okay, mic over to Mark.
Great, thank you, Thiru. Let me go ahead and share my screen with everybody, and then we will go through the presentation. And if you have questions at the end, you'll have the opportunity to ask them. So again, thank you, Thiru, and thank you everybody for inviting me. Today we're going to talk about estate planning. And one of the biggest things when you introduce estate planning, people have this kind of quick understanding of what estate planning is. But what it really is just two things. It's how do you protect your wealth and how do you protect your health, right? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Today, throughout the whole presentation, I'm going to really talk about three things, right? What is estate planning? What are the documents that you get from estate planning and why you need them, right? And just like the screen says, all we're going to talk about today is how you protect your wealth, your assets, and how do you protect your health, right? Your healthcare decisions. So let's get started. As Thiru said, we are NetLaw. I'm Mark Sterneman, Vice President of NetLaw. And, like the screen says, I love this. What is NetLaw, right? NetLaw is an online estate planning tool. We were created out of an estate planning law office in Louisville, Kentucky. That's where I'm from. And what we did before we created NetLaws, we all worked for the attorney's office, right? So, we worked for the attorney's office. People came in, we served wealth clients. You needed a lot of money to come in, speak to one of our attorneys, and you got your documents done, right? But, as you can imagine, we were only serving a small fraction of the community. What we wanted to do is take a company, we wanted to create a company, and how do we take estate planning nationwide at an affordable cost, right? And the easy answer was technology, right? So we created NetLaw. So NetLaw is a software that we created with attorneys in all 50 states. So we have a lead attorney in every state. And what we did is we went to them and we said, look, we want to create this software that when you go through our platform, you're going to get the same exact documents that you would get if they came in and saw an attorney in your state, right? In North Carolina. So when you do estate planning through NetLaw, you're getting the same exact documents as if you went and sat down in front of an attorney in North Carolina, right? But the great thing is, it's a DIY product. You get to do it from the convenience of your home when you and your spouse are both at home, and you can complete these documents. Our software won the James Keene Award from the American Bar Association for Innovative Excellence. Now, that award is given out each year to the company that has the best online delivery of legal documents. I'll say that again. The best online delivery of legal documents. So if you're a company that's online and you're in the legal field, that's the award you want to win. And we were, humbled enough to win that award. And some of our major competition in here, LegalZoom, LegalShow, these are companies you've heard of, right? They spend millions and millions of dollars on advertising. They haven't won this award. Why? Because they're focused on so many different things. They're great companies. But all we do at NetLaw is estate planning. That's all we focus on. And that's how we won this award, by being the best, right? We had the best online delivery from the American Bar Association. What a great award. So that's a little bit about NetLaw, how we were created. And, like I said, again, if you take anything away from what NetLaw is, it's an online tech company. It's a DIY product. They get you state-specific legal documents that you can do from the convenience of your home. Now, I'm going to skip around a little bit, but first I'm going to talk about the 4 major aspects of why you do estate planning. Remember in the beginning I said we're going to talk about what is estate planning, right? That's what I'm going to do right now. Protecting your assets, protecting your health decisions, right? So let's talk about why we really do this. And there's 4 major reasons. The first one, you decide who gets your assets. Here in the US, I know a lot of you may be first generation India, right? From India over here in the US. And definitely, and Thiru can attest to this, the process of doing your estate planning is a lot different than what it is over in India, right? It's easy to do over there, right? You know, in India, everything passes down to your spouse or to your kids, right? But it's not like that in the US. That's why it's so important to do your estate planning when you're over here in the US. You decide who gets your assets, right? In the will, there is a section called specific bequest, and that's where you list all of your major assets and the beneficiaries who are going to receive them. If you don't do that over here, the court system comes in and decides who gets your assets. It's a system called intestate. Intestate is a legal term that says, I died without a will, right? So the court system says, okay, you didn't have a will, so now we need to decide who gets your assets. So maybe only 50% of your assets go to your spouse, 25% to your kids, and then 25% may go to your brothers and sisters, right? That might not be how we want it to happen. That's why it's so important to do your will and make sure that the assets that you've accumulated get to the right beneficiaries. So you can see how important that is. The second reason, and this sticks with the same topic, the courts making your decisions. If you're a parent and you have a child or children under the age of 18, if you don't name a guardian in your will, again, the court system comes in and decides who the best person is to raise your kids. Now, if you're like me, There's no way in the world you're going to want that to happen, right? We know who's best to raise our kids. We know who we want to raise our kids. And it is so important to make sure that you go in there and you name that person, right? And this can be someone from overseas. It can be someone here in the US. Again, I know a lot of you all are first generation over here, which is great. But you need to do it the US way and make sure that you name a guardian in your will. And in the software, you name a main person and then you can name alternates. So the person that you may want to name as your guardian could be someone over in India, Mexico, China. It doesn't matter. But you always have an alternate that we suggest that you name someone here in the US, so that if something unexpected happens to you and your spouse, you have someone right here that can go take custody of the children until the main person can get over here. Isn't that important, right? Making sure that we protect our children. The third reason, you can avoid probate. So if you've never heard of probate before, probate is the process where if you die without a will, or if you die without your trust, all of your assets are frozen. So that gives creditors time to come in and take what's owed to them first. And then what's left gets distributed to your beneficiaries. We have a revocable living trust. Any major asset that contains a deed or a title can be transferred into the trust name where the trust owns it. That way, that process avoids probate. And when you pass away, your assets get distributed to your beneficiaries right away. Now, some of the things that you wouldn't put in the trust, 401k, life insurance, right? They already have a named beneficiary. You don't need to worry about that. What goes into the trust are assets like your home, cars, vacation homes, boats, anything with a deed or a title. A bank account, if you don't have a named beneficiary attached to your bank account, put it into the trust. That way, the funds in the bank account get distributed right away. If not, they're held in probate. Probate can last from anywhere from 30 to 150 days. That's a long time, right? So it's so important to make sure that you have this trust and that you fund the trust. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when I show you the plans that we have and the documents which are in each plan. And the last reason why you do estate planning is your medical decisions. This is just as important as protecting your finance. Remember my very first screen, it said protect your wealth. That's what we talked about so far. Now we're going to talk about protecting our health with our healthcare decisions, a medical power of attorney, right? Isn't it great to have someone that can speak for us if we can't speak for ourselves? As a generation, we're living longer. We're dealing more with Alzheimer's, dementia, right? Because we're living longer. It's great to make sure that when we get to that stage in life, if that ever happens to us, and hopefully it doesn't, but we all know the statistics. It's great to make sure that we have someone that can speak on our behalf, that shares our wishes with the doctors, nurses, right? Making sure that our decisions are taken care of. Same with the living will and advance directive. Those are your end of life decisions, right? What does that mean? Do you want to be hooked up to a machine and live as long as possible, fed nutrition? Or do you just want to pass naturally when it's time? Again, your decisions, right? This is why we do that. If we don't make this decision, it's the hospital's right to keep you alive as long as possible. And that may not be what you want. Because again, that will put an undue burden on your family, because laying in a hospital every day, it's expensive. It's a burden on the family mentally, right? So it's our decisions to make sure that we take care of all of our healthcare decisions. So why net law, right? So we've talked about everything that I've wanted to talk about. What is estate planning, right? We've talked about protecting our wealth, and protecting our health. We've talked about why you need it, right? The 4 major points. But what goes along with that is why net law, right? It's personal. Haven't I talked about your decisions the whole time? It's a personal decision. You need to make these decisions. Don't let anybody else make them for you. It's conversational, right? When you do this, let everybody know you did it. Let people know that you've made these decisions, because the worst thing you can do is do estate planning and you didn't tell anybody that these documents exist. How are they going to know, right? So make sure that everybody knows. Digital. Remember, we're a tech company, right? This is a DIY tech company. Your account is open 24/7. So it's not like having your account through an attorney. Well, what if something happens Friday night? You're not getting a hold of that attorney till Monday morning, but your account here is open 24/7. You can have your documents. You can print them out. You can email them to a physician or a hospital. 24/7 access to your account. And the last one I put in here is done. Excuse me. 60% of Americans don't have a will. 6 out of every 10 people don't have a will. 90% don't have all the documents that I've talked about and that I'm going to show you here in just a little bit. But you go back, and those are numbers from a Bloomberg report. They're not our numbers. That's a scary stat. 6 out of every 10 people haven't even protected their assets, let alone their healthcare decisions, right? So why net law? Those 4 reasons. And remember, we won the James Keene Award from the American Bar Association. We had the best online delivery of legal documents throughout all types of law. And we're the only one that's won it in estate planning. We're the only one in estate planning that's won this award. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you the plans that we offer. Oh, I went the wrong way. Okay.
Mark?
Did I lose you there?
No, you're good. So the life-changing events also need to be covered. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to talk. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let me do this. There we go. So I'm going to talk about that, and then I'm going to talk about the life-changing things. I'm going to combine it into one conversation. So here are the plans that we offer. 90% of what we do is the second column, $600 plan. That covers your will that we talked about, right? Naming an executor, right? The executor, who's in charge, right? When you name an executor, that's the person who's going to pay final expenditures. They're going to make sure that your assets get to the right beneficiaries. And again, most of the time, they can be someone from overseas. Some states require that an executor needs to be in the US, but some states let it be anybody. And again, there's alternates as well. So you can name a main person, and if that person's unable to fulfill the role, you can name alternates that can step in for that person. Again, we talked about the guardian. In the will, you do your guardian, right? Who's going to take care of your children if something happens to you? And the will is where we do our specific bequest, right? Listing all of our assets and listing the beneficiaries that go with it. We have a children's trust. If you want your children to receive their inheritance at age 18, great. That's the law in all 50 states. But the children's trust allows you to string that out a little bit. Maybe a third of it is given to them at age 21, a third of it at age 25, and the remainder at age 30. The percentages and the age range is up to you. You can change it. I'm just giving that as an example. But I know if I would have been given a lump sum at age 18, I would have blown right through it, right? I wouldn't have saved. I'm 18. I'm not thinking about the future. But this way, even in our death, we can still protect our children by not giving them that lump sum at age 18, and we string it out so that they get it at a time that's, they become more financially aware and more mature. We have the power of attorney, right? We all know what that is, our POA, right? Who's going to make our financial decisions for us if we're unable to do so, right? Who's going to pay our bills if we can't, if we're in the hospital? Or what happens if we go out of the country, right? We go out of the country for a couple months. Well, our bills still need to be paid. Our power of attorney can pay our bills for us. They can sell our house if they want. If we're trying to sell our house and we're out of the country, they can take over for us. We see the 3 healthcare documents there, right? The healthcare surrogate. Who's going to take care of our medical decisions, right? We talked about that, right? Having someone to speak for us. That's your healthcare surrogate, your medical power of attorney. It comes with a HIPAA authorization form. That allows someone to see your medical charts, psychotherapy notes. Usually the HIPAA authorization agent and the healthcare surrogate is usually the same person. Most of the time it is, but it can be different people. And then we already talked about the advanced directives or living will, right? End of life decisions. Do you want to be kept alive as long as possible, or do you want to pass naturally? Again, your decisions, right? This is your plan, your decisions. We have a pet trust. So if you have a dog or cat, remember, we're from Kentucky. So this was really developed because we have thousands of horse farms here, right? We're the breeding capital of the world for thoroughbred horses. But what we put the pet trust in this plan for dogs, cats, right? You can leave a little bit of money behind if someone has to take your animal to help them pay for vet bills, because vet bills are expensive. Boarding if you go out of town. Food, right? So we have a pet trust. And lastly, we have the revocable living trust, right? We talked about avoiding probate by having this trust. The best way that I can describe the trust is it's a holding document, right? It holds our major assets in this trust so that it avoids the probate process, and those assets are distributed to your beneficiaries right away. So those are all the documents for $600. We have 3 comes with, right? First, the vault. This is a place where you can store all of your important documents, not just your healthcare documents, not just your estate planning documents, but deeds to houses, titles to cars, life insurance information, annuity information, your tax information, pictures, videos, whatever you can download and store in our vault, you can do that. It has 100 gigabytes of data, so you should never run out of storage space. The spouse's plan is included, right? So for $600, the husband gets to create all of his documents. The wife gets to create all of her documents. And we have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Try it out. If you don't like it, as long as you don't download your documents, you get your money back. This plan in our Louisville, Kentucky law office costs anywhere from $3,500 to $5,000. So why is this so affordable? Remember, we've already worked with the attorneys. You don't have to pay the attorney fees. That's what gets you, the attorney fees. The attorneys in our office charge $450 an hour. We've already taken that expense out for you. All you have to do is create your documents. So again, 60% or 90% of what we do at Net Law is that plan right there. But we do have people who come up to us and go, hey, I can't afford the $600, right? We do have a financing option. Not a lot of people do it, but it's there if you need it. $60 a month for 12 months. The great thing is whether you do the $600 all up front, or if you start the monthly payment subscription, you get to start your documents day one. You don't have to wait till it's paid off. All of these documents are revocable. You can go in and change them. They're editable, right? You can go in and change them. If your executor changes or your guardian changes, you just log into your account and you make your change. But remember, every time you make a change to these documents, you need to print them out and get them witnessed and notarized, because that's what makes them a legal document. The $600 cost or the $60 for the 12 months, once you reach that first year, your plan will continue as it is. It will stay open and active, but we will charge $8 a month. If you don't want that fee, fine. It's optional. You can close your account down. But remember, if you close it down, you lose the ability to go in and edit your documents at any time. And you can't store anything else into your vault. Now, anything in your vault that you had before you closed down, you can go in and print out at any time. It's your vault. It's your documents. You can print them out at any time. We do have a reinstatement fee. And no, you don't have to pay the $600 again. The great thing is we charge $8 a month for however many months you were closed. So if it was 10 months and then something changed and you needed to come back and make a change, all we're going to charge you is $80, right? The $8 a month for the 10 months. But if it was 10 years later, we cap our fee at $250. So the most you'll ever pay to reactivate your account is $250. Why do we do that? We want to keep this as affordable as possible. If you're going to spend a lot of money on reinstatement fees and all that, well, you might as well just go see an attorney, right? We keep this and we made this so we make it affordable for people to use so more people do this. I'm going to run through the other 4 plans really quickly, but I'm not going to take a lot of time on these because remember, 90% of what we do is that second column. The $400 plan is the exact same plan as the $600, except for the trust. The revocable living trust is not included. The probate avoidance trust. So for $200, you can see why no one really buys that plan. For $200 extra, you get to avoid the probate process. The middle plan, the ILET, right? It's an irrevocable life insurance trust. This is a separate document. And it's a trust for your life insurance policies. Now, we recommend that you have at least $5 to $10 million before you buy this plan in life insurance. That's the starting point that would make this viable for you. And you just fund your life insurance policies into the trust. And then the two on the right, the $99 packages, I call them starter packages. They're really developed for 18, 19-year-olds. They've just become adults. They're getting out into the world. They're either going to the workforce or they're going to school, right? To college. They probably don't own a house. They don't own a car. So they don't need the full package. So we can start them off with a starter package and they can upgrade later to the full plan. But like I said, we don't sell a lot of these because normally if you're going to buy this, you're going to buy the $600 plan because it's going to last you your lifetime. But they do cover the power of attorney and the healthcare documents. The school has the FERPA consent form for colleges. All of these plans renew at after the first year for $8 a month. I created this last slide that I'm going to show you on why you would need to make your changes, right? A lot of people will call me and go, well, why would I ever want to change my documents? These are just some of the reasons I came up with, right? Change in marital status, right? I think that's a major one. If you buy this and you're single, remember, you know, when you get married, you can bring your spouse in. As long as you have an open and active account, you can add your spouse and he or she can do her documents. Or if you get divorced, you know, you'll want to take your ex-spouse out and add someone in. You know, maybe they're your executor. Maybe they're receiving an asset, right? You want to take them out and add someone else in. I think the big one is relocation to a new state, right? If you have your documents through an attorney and you live in, let's say, South Carolina, right? So you pay the fee from an attorney to get your documents done in South Carolina, but then you get a job in North Carolina. Well, now you got to go see another attorney and you got to pay the fee all over again. Because remember, each state has their own estate planning laws. That's why we work with attorneys in all 50 states to make sure that our documents are state specific. So now you have to pay the North Carolina attorney the money to redo your documents because you live in a different state. The great thing about NetLaw, all you would do is log into your account, change your address, reassemble all your documents, print them out and get them witnessed and notarized. They're going to update to North Carolina documents. You don't have to go see an attorney anymore for this. You don't have to pay the change fees, right? Every time that you go see an attorney and change a document, it's going to run you probably $300-400. That's crazy when you can do it online in the convenience of your home. So that's the last slide I'm going to show you. I'm going to throw it back to Thiru now, but I hope you've really gained a full understanding of what estate planning is, right? We've talked about what estate planning is by protecting your assets and your healthcare decisions. We've talked about why you need it, right? Naming an executor, naming a guardian, making sure that our assets get to the right individuals. And we've talked about the documents that come with it and why these documents are so important. So Thiru, I'm going to pass it back to you, and you can talk a little bit, or we can answer any questions, whatever you want to do now.
Yeah. So I will summarize quickly because some people joined, little late also. So once I summarize, then we'll open for question answers, and you take the questions, and in between, as needed, I will be part of that, session.
Okay. Yep.
So good evening, all participants. And once again, thanks to Telugu Association of Greater North Carolina area executive team to take the initiation for getting this awareness to the people. So what is here, like in India, we all come from India, right? In India, we have a Hindu Undivided Family Act, HUF. Okay, so not only that, in India, for every religion, we have a law. Hindu Undivided Family Act, like for Hindus, like Muslims, Christians and religion, there is a law for the people who doesn't believe any religion. It's a common law. So as per those, our country, one culture and stuff, the law is flexible and we do not need to write any will. If something happened to us in India, like parents, right? The kids and assets will go to grandparents and aunt, uncle. That's how it works, right? And here, right, law works different because due to whatever the cultural wise and multiple marriages and step parents, step childs, to protect the minor kids especially, right? So probate court will play the key role, and irrespective of visa status, everyone must have the will and trust. Okay, so follow, because everyone must follow the law of the land, right? So we can't just living here like in India and doesn't follow the law, we may end up in the trouble. So that is the reason I do agree most of us aware of that will. And so will is the document where we define executor, guardians, right? Executor is the person, key role, which is the most important role to shadow and make sure that will is executed according to our will. Okay, so that is a major part. In the will is the document where we define the executor's, guardians, roles and responsibilities. Who can be the executor? Who can be the guardian, right? So while preparing the estate planning, so we choose the key people. Okay, key people means like whom we believe, and in our family or friends or relatives, anyone. తెలుగులో చెప్పాలంటే ఆ నలుగురు అంటారు కదా, గుర్తుపెట్టుకోండి. అలాగా you need to have the key people here, so that those key people can be family members, relatives, friends, or those people. And for those people can be assigned the role to the executor and guardian and a trustee. Okay, can the key people be in abroad? Answer is yes. Okay, so the key people can be in only, don't have to be only in USA and green card or citizens. They can be with any status anywhere in the world. Are there any limit on the number of people to put the key people? There is no limit. There is no boundary that they have to be only here. Only particular states mandates that the executors must be from local to the country. But Texas and other states, there's no mandatory. Okay, so that's a key people eligibility, right? They can be family members, friends, relatives, and they can be anywhere. They can be with any status here, and except for the rules apply for the particular states. And so same people can be executor and guardian and trustee. Yes. Okay, so that's also there. And so what is the major peace of mind and protection having the will is you are defining and you are deciding your kids' future, who can be guardians, right? And how to distribute the assets, and how to take care of those little things, because we all believe our kids are our primary assets. And commonly the question comes, hey Thiru, we don't have big bungalows or millions of dollars. Do we still need to write the will? As I mentioned, I'm repeating the statements. We all believe our kids are our primary assets more than anything and everything. So yes, if you have the kids, minor kids especially, that's a focus will be there. And the question comes that, the will. What is the difference between will and trust? Okay. So Mark, please correct me if I'm as needed, right? So the will is the document where we define the roles and responsibilities and protect the family and wealth, and right. And when it comes to the trust is the logical and legal entity after completing the trust formation under the agreement and notarizing. So trust is needed to avoid probate court. So what is a probate court? Probate court is primarily to involve in any asset or wealth side, right? If something happens to parents, okay, and the deceased person's assets will be seized from the financial companies wherever we have the assets, because as per the government rule, right? So to get the access to the assets, and the people survive or beneficiaries has to go through the probate process. They may need to wait, and as Mark mentioned, 30 days to 150 days. Okay, in Texas, 6 months, as per my knowledge. So that is thing. So what is the advantage of having the trust? To avoid the probate court, to make it your assets more private and secure. Why is that? Because if something happened to both the parents, the government, each state rules will vary for the probate side. And so they will advertise that, so person are deceased, and there is a high possibility that there is a fraud may take place. So if something happened to both the parents, the kids are minor, and the deceased person's information, and this advertise that during the probate waiting period, so they will try to settle if there is any liabilities. So there is a possibility for the fraud. It's not like right? So that's why I'm saying that having the trust and attaching your assets to the trust makes your assets more private and secure, and also avoids the probate court. Those are all the key. So is it okay to have just will, not the trust? Or is it only, you can have the only trust, not the will? Highly recommended to have both of them. Now right? Will and trust, how that works, right? So, and Mark, do you want to add anything when it comes to the will and trust? Did we cover?
Yeah, the only thing that I would really add is, the perception, right? When people say, do you have your will and trust? Like it's one document. But really, they're two separate documents that do two totally separate things, right? One is a decision. That's your will, right? Who's going to be your executor? Who's going to be your guardian? Who's going to receive your assets? That's the will. That's your decision document. The trust is when do they get it, right? If you have the trust and you fund your assets into the trust, then they get it right away. If you choose not to do a trust, like Theru says, in Dallas, it's 180 days to wait. That's crazy, right? So for the ability to make sure that your assets are distributed right away, this is why it's highly recommended that you do a trust.
Yep.
That's really all I can say. You know, don't think of them as one document. Think of them as two separate documents.
Yep. Cool. Very good. Thank you, Mark. So that is the major no, understanding and clarity because most of us has that question. So in addition to that, you know, we do a lot of awareness programs to educate the people, and the questions comes like, you know, like this, right? We are in H1 and our kids born in India. We just came here and temporary, I mean H1 visa, and we may go back. Do we still need to have the will and trust? Answer is yes. As I mentioned, irrespective of visa status, everyone must follow the law of the land. Okay, so that is the most important thing we need to remember, and so that's why everyone has to do that. If you don't have the will, government has the default will. What does the default will does? Yes, government takes a decision. Mark clearly explained in the beginning of the first 2 points that, you know, if we don't have the will, government has the default will. Government decides who is the executor, who is the guardian, and you know, who is the trustee and all the stuff. And so if something happened to the parents, the kids, minor kids, will end up in the foster care. There are some states, I heard, if something happened to the husband, the kids default go to the wife. But if something happened to the wife, husband has to go through the court process to claim his own kids. Just imagine, because don't just assume and look at the internet and think. Go and work with the professionals. That is the main reason to our Telugu Association executive team took that, you know, forget about all the assumptions and misunderstanding. You need to have the first-hand information clear so that you will be protected. Okay, assumption is the killer. Okay, so any questions, we are opening for the question answers. Do not hesitate. No question is silly question or dumb question. Every question is very, very important, and because it's very personal and sensitive. Please do not hesitate. And so please, you know, share the question in the chat box. Sai Garu, you know, will help us to read that question, or you know, then he can also help you to unmute if you raise the hand for the question. Please make sure by end of the session you get the clarity on your question. Then it's fulfilled for association executive team and for the presenters. Yes, Sai Garu, any chat questions you want to unmute and just you know, raise, and you know, Mark and me will.
Yes, I think we have one caller. We just unmuted him. It's Venkat Ansumalli.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. So what are the assets or accounts that we cannot add to our trust?
Mark, do you want to address or you want me to take?
No, it doesn't matter. You want me to take it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure. So if I understood him, is what are assets that we wouldn't put into the trust? Was that the question? Yeah.
Yeah, which
So-
doesn't need to be on the trust, or we cannot add to the trust.
So, you know, what you would put in the trust are major assets. Things you wouldn't put in there, like living room furniture, right?
Right.
Dishes, stuff like that. But also your major assets that you do own that you wouldn't put in there, anything that already has a named beneficiary, a life insurance policy, an annuity, your 401k. If your bank account already has a named beneficiary on there, you don't have to put it in there. But what we want to focus on are things that do not have a named beneficiary, like your house, your cars, boats, vacation homes. Those are items that we would want to put in there.
So how about like Mark, gold or diamonds or any ornaments that we have?
No, you don't want to put those in the trust. You would put those in specific bequest in the will, because there's nothing to take that asset and fund over. There's no deed to it. There's no title to it.
Yeah, I will add one more thing for that. So you said what cannot add to the trust. So there is nothing such that you cannot add anything to the trust. as a jewelry and those things, right? So what you must add to the trust, what you must fund or attach to the trust is where you do not have the beneficiaries. Let's say, for example, you are buying the home.
Okay.
Do you mention any beneficiary in the home?
Yeah.
No.
Oh,
In
what
the
about
home,
the second? What about the secondary person that we add, like, when we sign the?
that's a giant. That's a giant, because most of the states, like community property states, we have the right put both the names. And North Carolina, they will mandate that the spouse needs to be in the house deed, right?
So does that work then? Like, just let's take an example for a house, right? Like when I closed my house, I added my spouse as a secondary person for the house. So
Correct.
does that work just when it comes to only house as a property? Say if I have a set of only house, right? Does that work? Like, adding a secondary person, or do we still need a trust and will?
Yes. No, will, trust, both are different. So when it comes to the assets, trust is the key player.
Right.
Okay. So will is the documentation. That's what we'll put it aside. Trust. Okay. Even if you have the house and the both the names, right?
Mhm.
That's a different case. But what happens if something happened to both of you?
Right.
Right. So why we need to have the trust? If something happened to see, either community property state or non-community property states, the law works most of the time. States mandate to put both the wife and husband name on the trust, in the house deed. So what we are doing, attaching our assets to the trust, means attaching our personal home where we do not have the beneficiaries if something happened to both the parents. So that's where, so we don't put the beneficiaries there. Those are all the things we must make sure that added to the trust so that it will be distributed immediately. Okay. So that's a one thing. And so example, so you are investing something in the real estate or land or rental property. That's also similar case. Okay. Personal home, personal home or real estate, those things. Where all we do beneficiaries, banks. Okay. Payable on death, they will be defined. Okay. POD, beneficiaries is defined. And when we came here like 20 years back, that time we didn't add, but by the time we realized that we need to add, we realized later. But nowadays, most of the banks are also mandating that you need to put the beneficiaries. Okay. If you are not defined beneficiaries in the banks, that needs to be added to the trust. Okay. Then where we have the default beneficiaries, 99% I guess, or 100%, 401ks. Definitely any retirement accounts, you will have the beneficiaries. And life insurance, you have the beneficiaries, primary or contingent beneficiary, like that. So those, wherever you have the beneficiaries defined, that avoids the probate court. And wherever the beneficiary is not defined, we don't have choice to define the beneficiaries, those must be added. Make sense? So we do, I do met the attorney in the North Carolina through help of one of my friend. And so they said, we have the will as per the employer documentation. And so we sat with her and I said that, she said, we don't need to have the trust. I said, why? It's not, just going to the probate court, it may be very cheap and only 30 days waiting period or something. What does it mean by cheap? Doesn't cost much. But can I walk into the probate court? No. How do I go to the probate court? I have to go with the attorney. The attorney charges fees. Yes. Right? So those are all things. Okay. Just clarify your questions here, and what and why do we need to that? Yes, of course, having something is better than having nothing, and so utilize that one too, right? So that is the, when attaching funding the assets to the trust, that's the key things we need to remember. But always never assume anything. Get the clarity. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a question from the chat window only. Okay, this question is from Bala Garu, and the question is, can you avoid probate by having last will and testament, or you need to have a trust?
Right. So to avoid probate, you must have the trust. The trust document is the document that will allow you to avoid probate, because once you put your assets into the trust, they become private. Anything that you have in your will is public information. Anything in your will go through probate. Anything in your trust stays private and avoids probate.
Good.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Next question.
Okay, we'll take a question from a caller. I'm unmuting caller Ravi. Ravi, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Ravi Garu. Okay, next.
Okay.
Looks like, yeah.
Sure.
There are, Sai Garu, there are some questions in the chat, some questions in the question answers. Yeah.
Let me get a question from, this is from the Sadhu Garu. The question is, how is NC law different from other states related to will and trust?
Right, so every state has their own estate planning laws. Like they were mentioned earlier, every state has an estate planning decision made for you if you haven't made your own. And every state is different. So, you know, and what does that mean? Every state is different. Well, you know, like I said, the court system will come in and decide who the guardians are going to be. But what it really does, it really talks about your assets and how they will be distributed. So in some states, everything may go to your spouse. In some states, it may be split up between your spouse, your children, and your immediate family, like your brothers and sisters. So, you know, I'm in Kentucky, so I'm not sure how the intestate laws are in North Carolina, but you can be assured that the way the distribution is going to be is probably not the way you want it to be. And you can find out by just Googling intestate laws of North Carolina, and that will tell you how your assets will be distributed if you don't complete your will.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, we have a question from a caller, Valli. Your line is unmuted.
You can talk. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm calling from Salt Lake City, Utah. And I just had a question about assets that are not in the US. Like many of us have, you know, a house or a piece of land or something in another country, like in India. Can those be listed in the will? And would those assets be under the jurisdiction of the United States or the country in which they are?
Want me to take that there, or do you want to take it?
Yeah, go ahead, sir. You take it.
So yes, you can do that. You can fund your assets that are in a different country into your U.S. trust. And it's kind of basically the same way. You know, if you own a piece of land or a home, you know, you're going to have a deed to that property, which you can, you know, but the thing is you would have to call over to India, have someone work on your behalf to take that deed and get it transferred to your U.S. trust. So always my solution is to, maybe you should just create a will over there. It would be a lot easier.
Yes.
But
true. Yeah.
Can you do it? Yes, you can. So theory, you probably know a lot more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we did help some of our clients. So the answer for the question, yes, we can attach Indian assets to the trust formed in USA. Answer is there. Another thing, how do we do that? Because the Indian laws and you know, related to the RBI is varies compared with the USA. So we need to work with the India chartered accounts or attorneys out there. We did help for the clients, and so it worked because, you know, but not many of the attorneys here knows about the Indian government rules to attach Indian assets to the trust, US trust. But working with in India, our chartered accounts or attorneys who is experts on that laws, that is the right way of doing it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Sai, you want to ask another question?
Yeah, let's get one from the chat window. This is from Satish Garu. The question is, when we say executor should be local, does it mean the executor should reside in the same state as the individual who opened the estate plan?
You know, It's always best to have someone close, but they don't have to be. A lot of states will let you choose anyone, because remember, you have the ability to go in and name alternates. So, you know, it's always best practice to have someone close so that they can come in and start right away on making sure that your assets get distributed. They can start paying final bills. They'll pay the taxes that are owed from you. So is it best to have someone? Probably, but it doesn't have to be. Remember, decision makings, right? That's what we've talked about. It's your decision on who you want to be. So if you're in North Carolina and your executor is in California, that's fine. But again, I always say, even if you name your main person, which is overseas, make sure that you name someone that's an alternate that can still play the role until they can get over here to handle everything. That's so important.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, sir.
Satish, you want to go ahead?
So we do not have any callers with who have raised their hand. You can continue.
Okay, that's fine. Let me read one more question from the chat window. This is from Karun Garu. The question is, can kids who are 8 and 9 years be on the will as beneficiaries? If yes, then how will they get the funds as they are minors?
So can you name your kids as beneficiaries even though they're minors? Absolutely. Absolutely you can. Now, what happens is they're minors. They can't receive assets, right? That's where the guardian comes in and plays the role, right? If the parents have passed and they're trying to leave something to their kids, or even if they haven't passed and they just want to, you know, leave the house to the kids, absolutely. But if something happens to the parents and the children are still minors, those assets will be controlled by the executor and the guardian. And what happens is they'll keep that safe until the kids turn 18, or if you've done your children's trust, then those assets will be distributed upon the age of their choosing. But yeah, the kids can be beneficiaries. They just won't receive their inheritance until at least age 18. Now, that doesn't mean that the guardian and the executor cannot agree to go in and take a little bit out for if the child or children have medical bills or for education, or maybe they need a car. Maybe they're starting work at 17, right? And they need a car to get back and forth. The executor and the guardian can agree to take money out for certain bills, but they just can't take it out for themselves, right? That's protected by law.
Thank you, sir. Satish?
We have a caller, Funny. Funny, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, my question is that does a spouse needs to write a separate will, or it can be on the same will?
Yeah, no. Each person will create their own will. Each person will create their own power of attorney document, and each person will create their own healthcare documents.
Okay.
But depending on what state you're in, if you're allowed to create a joint trust, then you both can share a trust. Now, what state are you in, sir?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay, so though that is not a joint community property state, so you will create your trust and your spouse will create her trust.
So as per this net law concern, so do we need to have a separate package for spouse, or both can be done in the same package?
No. One plan covers both spouses. So one $600 purchase gets your documents and gets her documents.
Yeah, thank you.
So next question is from Anita Garu from the chat window. Do we need to put the details of each and every asset that we have? I mean the address of each property and the banks.
Well, when you say details, I'm not sure what she means. What I'm thinking of is like for the bank account, what you would really need to do is just, you know, in your specific bequest, if you're leaving a bank account to someone, you know, you're going to want to name the bank. So let's just say it's, you know, I'm going to leave my bank account, my Bank of America bank account. account number ending in 1234. And then you name the beneficiary. That's all you have to do. You don't have to give full account numbers, or routing numbers like that. You can be as short as possible. I think that's what she's talking about. And Thurber, you can help me out if you think she means something else, but I'm thinking the details of every asset. There's really not details. The only detail, I'm sorry, I kept talking, Thurber. Sorry about that.
Good.
What I'm thinking of is jewelry. You would want to be specific on that. My wedding ring goes to my son, right? For me. My wife's wedding dress would go to daughter A, right? So you would want to be specific on that. What jewelry are you talking about? And a great thing to do is take a picture or a video, right? And say, this goes to child A, and then you store it into the vault, right? That way you have a video picture of what you're talking about. But that's really what I can think about on details. Pretty much, furniture, dishes, TV, stuff like that. You can let the families, decide what they want of that. What we really want to be detailed oriented on are bank accounts. Make sure you put the bank account number on there. Make sure you put the checking account number on there, or at least the last 4 digits. And jewelry, right? Jewelry is another one, because you just can't say my rings, and then say my rings, these rings go to child A, these rings go to child B. You want to be specific on that. But other than that, I don't think details really matter.
Yep. So Nita Garu, so regarding your question, right, I want to add a few more. As Mark said, if there is any specific, like either jewelry and furniture or anything like that, you don't need to mention other things. But if you say specific bequest, no, when you get the option, when you are completing the process, at the end of the specific bequest questions, you will get the 3 questions in the specific bequest. Specific bequest overall item, personal home, real estate. If you say no for all of them, the next question is, okay, give it to the spouse who is survive all. If not, equally distribute to the kids. That is like, more simpler, most of the clients who chose that option. Okay. It's our choice. Do we need to? Do we must be? No, nothing like that. Okay. It's because some of the family members, they say that, my jewelry, as Mark mentioned, unless you have the specific, I want to give this one to the son, this one to the daughter, this one to be the son-in-law or daughter-in-law, like that. Simply you can say specific bequest no, and at the end you can say that give it to the survived spouse. If not, equal share in the kids. That's also highly utilize the option from the clients. Hope that answers your question, Nita Garu. Go ahead, Satish Garu and Sai Garu.
Thank you.
All right, we have a caller, Babu. You're unmuted.
Hello, Andy. Tirumala Garu. You mentioned that Indian assets also can be added to the trust that is created here. Like, practically, have you ever executed these kind of things, Andy? And also, another question that I have is like, how you are related with the NETLA? Like, are you the agent with NETLA, and so how to deal with this?
Okay, so basically, yes, the Indian assets we can attach to the trust in America, because we worked with the Indian chartered accountants and attorneys. We helped some of the clients. Did I execute it? By God's grace, which I don't want to get that opportunity. I never prayed for it, because so I never got chance to execute the that kind of scenarios. Okay. Clients, yeah, clients are there, and who did the estate planning here and took the documents to India, and they worked with the chartered accounts there, and they attached the assets. That part is done. Means when it comes to the executed, means if something happened to them here, and we executed and giving the distribution, that I didn't come across. And when it comes to my role, I'm a financial professional, and so in the financial services, yes, we do estate planning, all other financial services. So, and I'm an authorized agent and helped more than 1,000 families last few years. And so I am here to be part of this awareness program as per the association request. And so we want to bring Mark, who is the expert and help for many webinars and the seminars. So we are here to just share the information. Again, this is not intentional or anything to do anything with the sales or business. Purely association executive team clearly mentioned, and we are also in the same ethical process that, this is purely awareness program, not like, sales or stuff. Okay.
Let's get one question from chat window only. This is from Dheeraj Garu. Is it power of attorney which gives the permission to someone to sell my house if I am not in US?
That's correct. Your power of attorney can sell your house on behalf of you. If you're unable to be at the closing, they can actually sign documents for you.
Thank you, sir.
You have a caller, Wally?
Yes, again, this is from Utah. I just had a question about children. If they are US citizens, and in the event of the death of both parents, if the guardianship is given to somebody out of India, that would mean you're giving guardianship of a US citizen to somebody who's not in the US and has to live outside the US. Would there be any restraints on that by federal law or state law?
No, because they have custody of the children now. So, if they want, they could, stay here in the US and raise the children and become US citizens. Or they can take the children back over to India. It's their choosing. That's something that you definitely want to have a conversation. If you feel one way or the other, if you want your children to stay here in the US, or it doesn't matter, they can go back over to India. That's something that you're going to want to talk to your guardians when you name them, to let them know what you want. And then that way they can make a clear decision. Yes, I'll be your guardian, or no, I won't.
No, but what if the guardian don't have any status to stay in the US? Say their grandparents who live in India who have no immigration status in the US.
Yeah, theory, you can talk on that, but there's ways to you can get your visa to stay over here. And with children, the government will always work with you when it comes to children. But theory, you probably have more experience in this than I do.
Yeah, sure. So technically, the guardians can be local or non-local. You can put from the people from India, like grandparents or aunt or uncle. And, so because that's one of the main reason, right, to make it more sense and easy, we always recommend to have executor, guardian, and trustee. Always there is a primary and alternative, secondary. So have at least one or two people local to the country who can come immediately into the situation, take a control of it. That's highly recommended. If you don't have anyone local, no friends, no relatives, and no one, so still you can put it from the people abroad. And because we are sharing the documentation, once we complete all this process and notarize the document, and to make it valid, we share the documents with our family members in India. Those documents can be used to get the visa, and they can come over here and take. Until that, because there is because again it depends on the state. It varies state to state, and we are not, as attorneys, we don't have top of mind that how that particular state works when it comes to the custody of the minor kids who lost the parents. And if they have even executor has the control, right? Executor is from local. That's why we always recommend have one or two people local to the country, either executor, guardian, and trustee, to show the document. Hey, they have the documentation. The people are on the way to claim the kid. Yeah, so it all depends on the state to state, and when it comes to the laws and rules, it may vary county and state and level, right? But still, our recommendation is to have at least, local friends. Let's put the, close friend, who can be one of the guardian. Like it could be the guardian can be, friend can be guardian, primary guardian or alternate guardian. Have them local. Make sure that every role, executor, guardian, trustee, have at least one or two local people to the country. It could be friend or anyone, right? But yes, you can, they can get the visa and show the documentation. That's why we always recommend to share, once you complete make the documents valid, share with our people, whoever is there in the documentation.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Let's get one question from the chat window. This is from Sureka Garu. The question is, if the documents are safe with NETLA and if the firm is no longer exists, what will happen to our documents?
Mark, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's funny that you asked that question because I had that asked yesterday, actually, what would happen if NetLaw went out of business? And I hate to think about that personally, but we're doing fine as a company. We're very financially strong, but if someone came in and bought us out, I would believe that they're buying us out because of the technology and the vault. So remember, you're always going to have your hard copy. When you do your documents, you print them out and you get them witnessed and notarized. So you're always going to have a hard copy of your document. I always suggest that you take that witnessed and notarized copy and scan it into your vault. That way, the company, if they come in and purchase us, they're going to use our vault because that's where all of everybody's documents are. So your documents, I can't imagine are going anywhere. But even if they do get rid of the vault, you still have your hard copy. So what I would suggest is when you print out your documents, you get them witnessed and notarized, scan them back into the vault, but go ahead and take a couple copies, right? And save them somewhere. Maybe your safety deposit box at your bank. Give them to your kids if they're adults, or give them to your executor in case something happens. That way you'll always have copies of your documents stored somewhere.
So I'll take a question from text. So this is, do we have to keep updating the trust every time we sell and buy new properties?
You want to answer there?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Great.
So, and whatever we have the assets as of today, right? Attach those assets where it did not define the beneficiaries. Attach those assets to the trust as of today. Okay. In future, if you are buying some property or any asset, buy them directly on the trust name so that it will be up to date. You don't need to make a changes to the existing trust unless you want to change the agreement in the trust, replacing the successor trustees or the stuff, right? Just putting the assets to the trust may not involve updating the whole trust stuff. You can directly buy the assets on the trust name. Makes sense, Satish Garu?
Yeah.
And only when do you want to make a changes to the trust, if you want to change the successor trustees or the rules in the within the agreement what we chose, hey, I want to give the assets to the kids, at the age of 21 or 25 or 30, 35, you want to make a changes, that's the time you need to make a changes. Otherwise, only when it comes to the attaching assets to the trust, in the future, directly buy the assets on the trust name so that you can avoid the step, one layer of process.
Okay. So we can take a chat question.
Yeah, I'll get one question from the chat. Can spouse be, this question is from Shekhar Garu. The question is, can spouse be the executor?
Yes, your spouse can be your executor. But again, if something happens to you and your spouse, maybe you're in a car wreck or something, you always want to make sure that you have alternates named as well in case something happens to both of you.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
I'll take
another question from Q&A.
Sure. So from Q&A, we have one more can the will and trust be created completely online without visiting the attorney or notary office?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we created this. We created Net Law so you don't have to speak to an attorney. You can create your documents online in the convenience of your home. And
Mark, but the question is, they need to visit notary office, right?
Yes.
notary. Oh, I thought he said attorney.
Yeah, both. I mean, they asked both,
Okay.
without visiting attorney or notary office.
All I heard was attorney. I'm sorry. Yeah. So you don't need to go see an attorney, but you do need to get a notary to notarize your documents. Absolutely.
Okay, over to you, Sai.
Yeah, I'll get one here. This question is from Sajayas, and the question is, can the will be used in the case of we are out of USA due to some visa issues? Can the executors take care of assets, or do we need to have the power of attorney?
Can the will be used in case we are out of the U.S. due to some visa issue? Yeah, so the documents here will protect all of your assets here. So if you move back to India for any reason, or you have to go back, as long as you keep ownership of your property, those documents will still protect your U.S. assets.
Oh.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, and really the executor, or the executors really wouldn't need to take care of anything because you're still alive, right? They only play the role if you pass, so you're still in charge of everything.
Yep.
Okay. We have a question in Q&A. So Mark and Thurmal, can a bank locker be added to a trust?
Bank locker.
Not into the trust, because there's no way to fund that bank locker into your trust. But you can put in specific bequest in the will that the bank, the safety deposit box exists, and to make sure that the assets that I have in there would go to a beneficiary.
I'll take the next question here. And the question is from Fanigaru. The question is, can we buy the assets on two trusts? As mentioned, both spouse should have two different trusts, like one husband has one trust and a spouse has another trust, like that.
Yeah, well, yeah, you could. You would need to buy two separate plans, and then I think what he's trying to get at is, can you have separate trust, one whole account for the husband and one whole account for the wife? Am I reading that right, Thiru?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's what it meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can buy a separate account. You can buy a $600 plan for the husband, $600 plan for the wife, and that way, you can put your assets into your trust. She can put her assets into her trust, and then, one can't see the other's accounts.
Maybe some misunderstanding in the questions. So assets on two trust, because let's say, Mark, it's a non-community property state. So non-community property states, default, our system, NetLaw, allow you to, NetLaw will create the separate trust for each spouse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
So means,
okay.
Yeah, they have the two trusts already with the same package, right?
Yeah.
So two trusts are formed, okay?
Yeah. So one plan, so one plan, the husband can create his trust, the wife can create her trust, but it's still in one plan.
I agree. Regarding the price wise, we are talking about, let's say there is a asset, right? They bought one property. Let's say even some asset, they bought it. So the asset can be attached to two trusts, or, how to make sure that asset is linked.
The asset would have to be in one trust. Well, let me back up on that, because I've seen examples of where a wife and husband are both on the deed of their property. And what they wanted to do is they say, normally what happens is the trust will be renamed in one of their documents. So if you redeed the trust and you redo the deed into the husband's trust, then in the husband's will, he puts in the house as a specific bequest and the beneficiary is the wife. That way, if something happens to him, she gets the property. But I have seen where they've went it down to the county clerk's office and created 2 deeds, a 50% deed for him and a 50% deed for her. Then he puts the 50% of his in his trust, 50% of the deed that she created for her into her trust. That doesn't happen a lot. I mean, I can probably only think of 2 times I've ever seen that in 10 years. Yeah, so you could do that, but a lot of people just put the assets in one of the spouse's accounts, and then the other spouse is the beneficiary to all of those assets.
So in this case, why do we need 2 trusts in the first place?
It's going to create 2 trusts automatically because you're not in a joint community property state. Whether you use the other spouse's trust or not is totally up to you. That could be, you could just leave it blank. If you're going to put all of the assets into one trust, you just leave the other one blank.
Oh, okay. So one spouse can be main trustee, and second spouse, like wife, can be create one trust, but it can be empty. But in the primary, husband can mention a wife as a beneficiary.
You got it. And the reason we're going to create the wife's account, the trust account anyway, is if the husband passes away, the wife still has her trust to go back and add everything back into.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, another thing I want to add, Fanny Garu. So when you are forming the trust, right, for each spouse, it will ask you primary trustee. Okay, the primary trustee is either you go to the financial power of attorney or when you trust thing. Primary for the husband, wife is the primary, and for the wife, husband is the primary. Then alternate or successor trustees come into the picture. So that's also there. You can, and during the completing the process, they will ask you who is the primary trustee. And, for the community property estate, wife and husband are both the primary trustees. Then they will ask you successor trustees if something happened to both of you. In this case, when you have the separate trust, they're asking if something happened to me, my spouse is the primary trustee, and then successor trustee, like that means something happened to both. So yeah, it is in the trust agreement. Yeah, you can find that information too. As Mark said, yeah, I mentioned that's also one thing, and this one also another added point.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Let me take a question from the chat window. This is from Karun Garu. The question is, when we include properties in India, do we need to mention all the details such as survey number and location details in the will, or can it be very generic, like there is a land in some village that goes to kid number 1 and the other goes to kid number 2?
Like, I will take that answer, Mark.
Okay.
So, like we did refer our chartered accountants and attorneys to India, and so they collected the information of the assets of that client, and they attached it. But is it specifically mentioned entire details? I'm not sure on that, because the client who took the services, they said that we attached the assets, but we didn't go in detail. But technically the blanket kind of thing may or may not work in India for sure, but for sure in America it will not work. In America it has to be very specific: house, asset 1, asset 2, like that. In India it may work, but I will check with my chartered account CPA, chartered account or attorney in India. Is that a very specific details we need to mention, or is it covers? Go ahead, Satish Garu.
Yeah, we'll take a question from Q&A. Can the executor and guardian be the same person in the will?
Yes.
Answer is yes.
And the follow-up question, Mark, is: are there any pros or cons to that?
No, it's totally up to you. It's whoever you feel most comfortable with, right? So if that person that you feel is best, provides the best option for you, then absolutely they're the person you should choose.
Okay. We have one more Q&A question. One second, please. if there are assets in multiple states, should the will and trust be registered in all the states?
No, just in the state that you live in.
Resident state.
Mhm.
Okay. Sagar, you can take a chat
I don't
question.
have any other questions here.
Okay, I have some questions on chat, sorry, text. So just give me 1 second. So Mark, a question is, if both parents have passed away and the kids are alive, what happens to the house under the mortgage? Yeah, what happens to the house mortgage?
Mhm.
Will it go to probate court? And the second part of the question is, what happens to the equity in the house?
Yeah. So are we assuming that the children are under the age of 18?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, the house would be, you could keep the house for the kids or you could sell it. The funds from the selling of the house will stay in trust for the children until they reach 18 or the age at which the parents said that they can start receiving their inheritance. That's up to the executor and the guardian. So the guardian and the executor will come to an agreement on what they're going to do with all of the assets. Especially, you take an example of, mom and dad are alive. They go out to a movie. They come back, they're killed in a car wreck, right? Their kids are 4 years old and 2 years old. Well, you're not going to keep that house, for another 14 years, just sitting there until the kids turn 18. So what's most likely is the executor and the guardians will get together and they will sell the house. The proceeds off of that house will sit in trust until the kids turn 18. Theory, have you had an example of that?
Mark, was that a question for me?
No, I was gonna say, Theru, have you had an example of what the executor and the guardian have done? I mean, there's a lot of options. You could take the funding off of the house and then you could get a life insurance for the kids. You could set up an annuity for them. That's when you want to talk to your financial advisor. There's a lot of things that you can do with the proceeds of the house, but I'll let Thiru, because he's the financial agent. He probably has a lot of examples of this happening.
Yeah. So basically, we do have something happens like that, assuming that they do have the estate planning, right, Satish Garu?
In this case, it can be both ways, right? I mean, if they didn't have a will and trust, or if they had a will and trust.
Yeah. If they don't have the will and trust, definitely it end up in the probate court. Okay. So the liability is the lender will have the right of control, right? Because they will take their portion. They may come and work with the state, because the state is freezing that probate court, right? So controlling that. That is one way of settling, and the rest of the things will be with the money, right? We have to go through the probate court process. Means I have to hire the attorney, and if they don't have the will and trust, they have to hire the attorney, go to the probate court, and first to clear off the things. The court will say that first clear off the things, and rest of the things is yours. That is a process. Very painful. It takes time, and it's a human loss, and it itself is the biggest loss. So if they already have the estate planning attached to the asset to the trust, as Mark mentioned, yes, the first lender will be taken care. Executor and guardian, executor is the key person, one of the most important role. They will settle on that, and remaining one put it in the trust and work with the successor trustees. Because when you form the trust, we are also defining the successor trustees. In the trust agreement, we are mentioning that how to distribute the asset, the money. And the executor and guardian has the right to utilize that funds, not for the personal, for the kids' benefit. This is answered in the between. And yes, we came across some other situations, so many in the states, right? So yes, we sit with the family and go through what are the options they have it, and where they want to go through the kids' study education and all that stuff. And so we plan the financials to meet their, requirements, how it works. But in that case, it's a specific. So those things, yes, you have to suggest them to work with a financial professional. As this webinar is purely for the awareness of the estate planning, so I want to limit my information to how to protect a family and wealth. Wealth without family, family without wealth, it doesn't fulfill the life. So protecting both of them is the highest priority.
Okay, sir, I have a question here from the chat window. Can we download the questionnaire online to start the process? I mean, from the Netla website.
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a brochure that you can download, and you can talk to well, you could actually refer back to the brochure that was passed out, and someone can help you get the worksheet that we have, and it prepares you for all the answers that are in the Net Law program. So, when it talks to you about executors or guardians, it gives you a worksheet where you can fill that out, and it kind of gets you thinking about it before you actually get into the plan. So you have some kind of idea of, yeah, this is who I'm going to make my executor. This is who I'm going to make my guardian. These are the assets that I want to list out. So it's just a great worksheet to use before you start your documents. I highly recommend it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. That was the question from Bhavya Garu. And I have another question from Kishore Garu here. In case if we don't have the guardians nearby, can the kids be given to grandparents? Probably, I think the grandparents in India, I believe.
Well, the only way that they can go to the grandparents right away is if you name them like an alternate guardian, right? So you would name the guardian that you list, and then you would name an alternate. So if grandparents are in India and you want to make them your main guardian, that's fine. But if they can't get over here right away, you're going to want to make sure that you name that alternate so that that person can fulfill the role, take custody of the kids until the grandparents can get over here. Because you don't want to leave the kids up to the court system.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, there is a question in the Q&A. This is from Buji. Should I share a copy of will and trust to the executor once it is prepared? Or how will they access when something happens unless they're made aware of where to find them?
Yeah, always a great idea to share that with your executor, because remember, they're the ones that are in charge. So it's always important to make sure that the executor has a copy of everything. But then make sure that if you have adult kids, make sure they have a copy of it. Make sure you have a copy of it at your bank so somebody can grab it. But remember, the great thing about having Net Law is that vault system. When you scan your documents into the vault, now you have an electronic copy of it. So you can log on to your Net Law account through your mobile phone. You always have a copy of it with you.
Okay, anybody else on callers, if you want to ask a question, please press the raise your hand icon.
I think, Satish, we missed one question in the Q&A that was asked by Naga Nalla. Is there any age limit for key people? Is age of 18 enough for key people?
Yeah, you have to be 18 or over to play the role of an executor or a guardian. Now, you don't have to be 18 to be a beneficiary. But to play the role of an executor or guardian or alternate trustee, or I'm sorry, successor trustee, then you would need to be 18 or over.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing. Thanks, Mark, on that point. And see, when you're assigning the roles and responsibilities, means choosing the key people, think in this scenario. The people who is close to our age, plus or minus 5 years. Okay, that is always better, right? So then our parents, in-laws, like that. The reason why I'm saying that, never know, right? when and how the situation comes. So it will be longer term, so that we don't need to make a changes more often. Right? I would put like, my siblings or my niece, or, which is younger and close to 5 plus or minus 5 years close to my our age. That really helps. After that, yes, you can put, make sure parents, in-laws, like that. Make sense?
Yes. We have a question from text. It's like, what is HIPAA authorization?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
HIPAA authorization, Health Information Portable Affordable Privacy Affordable Act. So HIPAA is like, if you call your health insurance people to find out your spouse information, right? You cannot get it unless they are in the call, or you have the authorization to grab it. It's like, because in this country, privacy is the very highest priority. We have seen that you need to have the proper documentation. Otherwise, you cannot. Even if your kid is 18 years and above, you cannot even take the doctor appointment without the kid authorize you. You know that? So, and anyway, I am just remember one joke, right? So, in here, తెలుగులో ఉమ్మడి కుటుంబం అంటారు కదండి. ఇండియాలో ఉమ్మడి కుటుంబం అంటే ఏంటి? పేరెంట్స్ సైడ్ నుంచి అందరు కలిపి. ఇక్కడ ఉమ్మడి కుటుంబం అంటే 89 years అండ్ అబోవ్ వాళ్ళు పేరెంట్స్ తో కలిసి ఉన్నా కూడా అది ఉమ్మడి కుటుంబం కిందకి వస్తుంది. సో దట్స్ ఇట్ మేక్స్ ప్రైవసీ అన్నది అనమాట. అంత priority ఉంటుంది ఇక్కడ. Hope you understand what I mean.
Sure. Sagar, do you have a question on the chat?
No, that's all.
So we have a question.
Sorry, I just got one question from Vardhan Garu. The question is, do we need to discuss with the person whom we want to add as guardian?
Yes. Yes, whomever you are putting the roles, executor, guardian, or trustee, you need to talk to them and let them know that you are assigning the roles.
Okay.
And also share the documentation. Go ahead, sir.
Sure. So I have a question from Q&A. Can a person without SSN and driver license act as an executor?
Act as?
An executor.
So, answer is yes.
Yes. Okay. The other question I have is, do the key people need to sign the document? Does it need to be physical or e-signature?
No, the key people don't sign anywhere. The only persons that will sign this document is the client, the witnesses, and then the notary will use his or her stamp to stamp all the documents. So the executor doesn't have to sign anything. The guardians don't have to sign anything. It's just the clients and the witnesses.
Yeah. Saigar, Vardhan question has a follow-up question. I'll answer that.
Yeah, please, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Vardhan questions, follow-up question for that is, a guardian and executor will know all my property is correct. So we can answer in the different scenarios, Vardhan Garu. So technically, when this executor, guardians will come into the picture if something happened to both the parents. Because for the wife, husband is the primary executor. For the husband, wife is the primary executor. We also make sure that we put the alternate executors. Who are those? The same key people. If something happened to both the places, means, right? So if something happened to both the parents, the kids are minor, then guardians or executors will come into the picture, right? So the documents we are sharing with them, copies or with the executor, whatever the documents you are sharing with the medical power of attorney, financial power of attorney, or HIPAA authorization, and last will and testament, and trust certificate and trust agreement, total 7 plus 7, 14 documents will get it. Those documents will not show any assets information. Okay, assets information is only known by this primary trustees, wife and husband. They know, those people know the name of the trust. Just knowing the name of trust doesn't mean that they know what is there in the trust. To the executor or guardian or anyone, to know about what is there, even for the successor trustees, to know what is there in the trust, they need to prove that these two people are deceased, death certificate, and this certificate of trustees where they will see, they'll have their names, successor trustees' names. Until that, they will not know what is there in the trust. First of all this documentation will come into the picture when disease takes place in the family. Okay. Is that answers your question, Vardhan Garu? In the chat, you can say yes, thumbs up, or no, or need more clarity.
Looks like it does.
Perfect.
Okay, we have one more question from text. Can I change the executors and guardians later after executing the will and trust?
Yeah, absolutely. As long as you have an open and active account. So if you're not paying the $8 a month after the first year, then you can't change anything. But as long as your account's up to date, you can change anything at any time.
Okay. Yeah, we have one more question from text, Mark. It's, if the children reach the age of 18 years, what will happen to the executed will and trust? Will it become void?
No, the documents stay legal. So if the parents are still alive, you know, everything stays the same. Now, what they'll probably do is they'll probably go back and add more stuff, right? So if they didn't leave anything to the kids because they were young, they may now want to add the kids to a specific asset, or they may make the children, because they were so young, they didn't make them successor trustees. Maybe they want to make them successor trustees when they become adults. So there's a lot that still needs to be ironed out even after the kids become 18 or older.
Mark, we have one follow-up question on that text. Is there a limit on the number of executors and guardians that can be added to a will?
There's not. But remember, once you start naming more than one, they usually have to work jointly. So if you need 2 people, then they both have to agree. If you name 3 people, 2 out of the 3 are going to roll. And it gets more and more complicated after that, right? So best practices is name 1 person, and then your alternates can be multiple. But that way, someone's always in charge of the decision. And remember, you always have the ability to go back and take people out, add people in. So to have more people sometimes isn't a better thing.
Okay, I have one last question, unless if there's anything else on chat. So I got a question from text. It's, I think you may have already touched this. Can we add guardians from India, or do they have to be from the US?
No, yeah. So the guardians can be from overseas, or they can be here from the US. What you have to be careful about is if you name your main people from overseas, they need the ability to come over here. So they have to have their passports already, or they have to have their visas ready. That's why we name alternates, right? So if they can't get over here, we have someone else who's going to come take custody of the kids until they can get over here. So the alternates probably should be someone that live here in the States, maybe in the same state.
Okay, sir, I got one more question here. If a wife and husband, they both have separate wills, and if the will contradicts each other, what happens?
Okay, I'm sorry, you clicked out on me there. I couldn't understand the question.
If the wife and husband, they have separate wills, and if both the wills contradict each other, what happens?
That's okay. So what happens is if the husband dies first, then his assets will be distributed. Then if the wife dies later, her assets will be distributed. So on the will, it really doesn't matter, because when you name assets, that's okay. The assets that you say you have, as long as they're your assets, get distributed. But, you know, usually husband and wife get together, and if the house is jointly owned, they're going to give it to the same person. But even if it doesn't, the odds of husband and wives dying together are very, 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 very small, right? So even if the husband says, if I own the house, I want it to go to my brother. And the wife says, I own the house, and in my will, I'm leaving it to my sister. That's okay, because whoever dies first, the house is going to stay with the other spouse. Then when the second one passes away, their decisions will be made. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. We have a question from Q&A. I think you already touched this, Mark, but you know, I still go ahead and ask. It's once we create a will, when does one need to update it? When we have a new family member, or when we buy new properties? When do we do this?
All of the above, right? Anytime there's a change, you need to keep your plan as current as possible, because the thing is, we don't want to pass away with assets that our executor doesn't know about, or it's not listed in our plan because they're not going to know, right? So we want to keep our wills and our healthcare decisions and our power of attorney up to date as much as possible. That way it's going to make it easier when you pass away for your executor to make sure that all of your assets get distributed to your beneficiaries.
Okay, those are the questions I had signed. Do you have, I think you may have something in chat.
No, this is from Tirumala Garu.
I just responded for Vardhan's question, the guardian and executor responsibilities in the chat message. So what is the guardian and does, and what is the executor does? Yep. And anyone, you know, like Sai Garu and Satish was doing their best to capture all the questions from text and chat and, you know, the Q&A. If anyone of you feel anything missing, you know, please, you know, raise the hand and unmute yourself. I mean, Satish Garu will unmute and you can ask. So 10 more minutes we have, and yeah.
Yeah, like Tirumala Garu said, if anybody has on the phone or on the chat have any questions, please click the raise your hand button and I'll unmute you.
Or you can type in the chat window. Otherwise, we'll conclude the session here. And before we conclude, I would like to thank Mark and Tirumala Garu for taking time this afternoon to present the Will and Trust webinar to the Telugu community in Charlotte. And we sincerely appreciate you both answering questions from the participants. Also, I would like to thank all the participants who joined today webinar conducted by TAGCA. And we hope you found this webinar very informative during these uncertain times. And we will share this Zoom recording link to the community in the next few days via email and also on the social media. And we thank you again, and please stay home and please stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Tirumala Garu. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mark. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.